One of the things about Portugal that I love is you could have any type of wedding that you want to have. If you want to have a garden wedding, if you want to have a castle wedding, a palace, because I learned the difference between a castle and a palace. I didn't know the difference, but there's a difference. Whatever. If you want to get married in a fort, you want to get married in a vineyard, on the beach, in a glass house, you really can have any of that. If you're thinking about getting married in Portugal, if you are thinking about doing a destination wedding, and maybe you have no plan to get married, but you just want to see the things, this is the video you probably don't want to skip. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Devonna Turner and I am a fashion, beauty, lifestyle, and now bridal creator. We are getting married this September 2025 in Portugal. And one of the things that a lot of people ask us is how we found our venue, what that process looked like. And so that is what this video is going to be about. Sharing with you all our experience from when we did our wedding venue tours. In this video, I'm going to show y'all the venues that we toured. I'm going to be answering why we chose Portugal, because that's a question we get all the time. Why Portugal? Also be breaking down cost of the venues. This won't be the actual cost of our wedding, but this will at least give you insight on how much it was going to cost us to go with some of these venues. Unfortunately, I will not be showing y'all the venue we went with because we need surprises. So follow along, make sure you're subscribed, and I will be doing a video and sharing more of that. I might even do a video dedicated to that venue tour, because you could see from that experience how excited and happy I was. I literally love our venue. Even when we went back, we've since gone back to do our wedding tastings and whatnot. Even when we went back, I still had that magical experience, that magical feeling like they just said, this is the venue that we're supposed to get married at. Anyhow, if there are any questions that I don't answer in this video, please make sure you comment them below so that I can make sure that we circle back on those. If your bride is getting married in Portugal, hit me up if you need anything. One of the things that I struggle with, especially as a Black woman, was finding hairstylists and makeup artists that I loved in Portugal. And I can proudly say that I found a makeup artist that is based in Portugal that I love. However, with the hair situation, I had to fly in one of the London girls. So that's something that I also keep in mind. But I can also share more about that in another video. Just let me know. Actually did our wedding venue tours, I think we went last year this time almost. So right now it's currently March 7th. To give you context, so we went out about a year ago, so March 2024, around that time is when we went to Portugal for the first time to tour venues, to interview wedding planners in person, because vibes never lie. And we actually came back from that trip with a wedding planner and with our venue secured. Both myself and my fiance, we're so new to this. We didn't have a lot of friends or family to really lean on throughout this process. So we've kind of been making it up as we go. And that's one of the things that I really love about our wedding and how we're doing. We're doing whatever we want to do, okay? Because it's our wedding and we're paying for it. In this video, I'm going to be showing you 10 venues that we toured. I don't know what's normal as far as like how many venues you should or shouldn't tour, but I will say this: of the 10 venues, I didn't have that magical moment like that, like this is the one, until we got to the 10th tour. So it was starting to get a little shaky and I was getting very discouraged, because we were either touring venues that were like out of our price range or touring venues that just didn't have that magical spark that we were looking for. One of the questions that I know people are probably going to have is like, how did we even find these venues? So before we even went to Portugal, I scoured the internet, literally scoured the internet. I looked through Google. I did Google searches. I did TikTok searches. I did a little bit Instagram searches. Honestly, Instagram, you need to step your keyword game up because it's hard to find things on Instagram. But anywho, I was able to reach out to several different wedding planners. Oftentimes when you reach out to a wedding planner, they have like some type of form or questionnaire that you could fill out in order to get in contact with them. So a lot of the times they would ask what your budget is, or they would share what the minimum budget they work with is. So that's one thing to consider. And very early on, we understood that like the budget that we had was going to be tricky to work with. And I'm going to do another video on our budget and how we landed on our budget, but that one might come later in the year. I'm just a little nervous about sharing that information. But we narrowed down a couple of the wedding planners that were in our budget and that we were interested in talking to. And from there, one of the wedding planners was willing to give us recommendations as far as like venues to tour. So we pulled from her list of venues that she communicated were in our budget. And then she also gave us some like dream venue tours that she hadn't worked with, but based off what we shared our vibe was for our wedding, she thought went well with that. So that's how we got a few of those. We also found several through like searches, like I said, TikTok searches. And one of the things that I really did appreciate is I sent one of the wedding planners several different venues that we were considering, and she was very honest with us, which I really love what my experience has been with working with people in Portugal. They're very honest and very genuine. So she was very honest in the beginning with some of the venues that she either had a bad experience with or she felt like weren't, that they look great online, but when you see them in person, they need a little bit more maintenance and upkeep than is outlined. So that's how we narrowed down our list. From there, because we hadn't secured our wedding planner, I was responsible for reaching out to the venues, scheduling all of our tours. So that's what we did. Most of the venues had websites where you could reach out and get in contact with someone. And so I got in contact with someone, scheduled all of our venue tours, which was kind of hard because the time difference was messing me up. So I was scheduling venue tours at wrong times, but I finally got the hang of it. Once we had our list of venues mapped out, we were, even when we arrived to Portugal, we were still adding venues to our list. So there was a point, I think it was like we were there for a week, and it was like our second to last day. I had messaged the main wedding planner that we're really interested in, that was very helpful throughout the process. And again, shout out to them because we weren't even in contract with them, but they were all already super helpful throughout the process. But I reached out to her. I told her we weren't having luck with some of our venues that we were touring, and she sent a couple of other venues. And so one of the things that I realized that oftentimes when you do get there, you might be able to still schedule some tours, especially if it's during the week. The weekend is a little bit more challenging because those are prime time for weddings, and so some of the venues would have been busy or would have been producing events during those times. So we booked most of our wedding tours during the week and really just allowed ourselves to enjoy majority of the weekend. Now, as far as the vibe we were going for, honestly, I wanted it to give modern day Princess Diaries. One of the most beautiful things about Portugal, you could have any type of wedding that you want to have. If you want to have a garden wedding, if you want to have a castle wedding, a palace, because I learned the difference between a castle and a palace. I didn't know the difference, but there's a difference. Whatever. If you want to get married in a fort, you want to get married in a vineyard, on the beach, in a glass house, you really can have any of that. I haven't said this, but we plan to get married in Lisbon, but we toured venues that were both in Lisbon and surrounding areas of Lisbon. So Sintra, Lisbon, and then some of the areas near local beaches and different things like that. I'll put the information on this in the description so you know the venue, where it's located, and all of that. And if I still have that information, I'll also share the cost of the venue. Now, keep in mind, some of these prices were from when we were in from 2024 and 2025. So if you are getting married in 2026 or beyond, these prices might not be the same. Prices just might not be the same in general. Some of the venues were also hotels. So when it came to booking those venues, some of them required you to book the entire hotel out. That's where it started to get a little crazy because the cost of doing that is insane. One of them, it was 35,000 euros for the night to book out all the hotel rooms and to utilize the venue space. But keep in mind, your guests tend to cover that cost as they pay for their hotel rooms. But those venues were automatically X'd out when they told us that, because when it comes to traveling abroad, you just don't want to rely on your guests showing up to pay for their room to knock the price down. Can't do it. I can't go with those odds. Outside of the selection of venues that we had in Portugal, one of the other things that we really liked is Portugal. One, they're known for their wine. And so if you want to, a lot of times weddings there, like rather than having an open bar, you could do wine. Oftentimes it's a cheaper way to still keep your guests happy, give them wine rather than doing an open bar. We're doing an open bar, but that's still an option that we were able to consider. Another thing that we really liked about Portugal was the food scene. We've had such really good food in Portugal, specifically seafood. The seafood is so fresh, so good, and a lot of their dishes are very flavorful. When we did our wedding tastings, because we've since gone back to Portugal to do our trials, bridal trials, tastings, different things like that. And when we did our tastings, we had the hardest time choosing between one of the vendors that was the food was immaculate, the taste was amazing, and then another vendor where like the food wasn't amazing, but the presentation was like, it blew you away. I'm going to be making another video about our wedding trials and on what that experience was like, so I'll share more of those details there. Without further ado, let's get into these wedding venues. For the remainder of the video, I'm just going to do a voiceover with those videos. So if y'all see me later on in this video in a different outfit, it's because I forgot to tell y'all something and I clipped it in. But anyway, let's get into it. So the first venue that we toured is called La Distillerie Lisbon. And you're probably like, sis, what is going on? There was some construction going on to the main road to enter the venue. And I wanted to make sure that I also incorporated that because that's something to consider. Like, you see the pictures and everything online, but you never know what's going on like current day. And he did assure us that like it wouldn't be there during the time of our wedding. I also wanted to point out the decor that was incorporated in the venue because with some venues, they have decor that like you're not allowed to take down. In this case, they said you could take the animal down if you wanted to, but it would just be a labor fee to do that. The room that we're in right now is their main reception space. I really, really like this area, especially for like dancing, and when I say reception, I mean like the party part of the reception, not like the dinner. I really like this space because I thought it was like a blank slate. So you really could do whatever with it that you want. I also really love the disco ball that was there. Now this room that we're entering in, I don't remember off the top of my head what she said this room was for, but I believe it can be used for like dinner. Now, one of the things that I want to point out about this venue particularly, there is no, like, it doesn't come with any staff. It doesn't come with, like, decor, any type of rentals, really anything. So you would have to incorporate everything on your own. My favorite spot of this venue is this area that they typically do, like, cocktails. I love the car that's parked out there. Now, right now, we're going upstairs to the actual ceremony space. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you the positives. I really liked how large this space was and how you really have a lot of space to work with. This could be a positive or a negative depending on the size of the wedding that you are having. We were inviting 105 people and expecting maybe 75. And I really like the beautiful outdoor area. Now, as far as negatives, I talked about this. Like, when it comes to accommodations, there's no staff, no decor, no rentals, really anything. So that can really surge the price of your overall like expenses. And then as far as costs, we were quoted €7,500 for 70 to 100 people, and we could host a wedding from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. But this did not include any licenses such as like noise licenses or cleaning fees or anything like that. Ultimately, we didn't go with this space, but I think if you're looking for a venue that has more of that like industrial feel to it, I think this could be a really good option. And it's on the more affordable side when it comes to like what we were quoted by some of the other venues. You just got to keep in mind all the additional things that would add up. Now, this next one, I'm going to butcher the name. It's Aethos Ericeira, and it's located in Encarnaça. I hope I'm saying that right. Lord, forgive me. This is located about an hour away from Lisbon. It is a hotel that requires exclusivity for you to book. So it requires you to book 2 nights in order to utilize their spaces. This area that we're in right now is where they typically have like the dinner during the reception. And then the outside area is typically where the ceremony space is. We honestly fell in love with this space. I think if you are a couple that is looking for like a modern space, this is the perfect place for you to have a wedding. But the only thing for us was it was almost too modern. As you can see, it's absolutely stunning. Guests can stay and literally walk right out to the wedding. The area that we're in right now is like this is where the ceremony space would take. So the chairs would sit like in that lawn area, and then the aisle would be that like boardwalk kind of look. I don't know if that's considered a boardwalk. But anyways, that's what it is. This area that we're in, they said that this is oftentimes an area where people get ready, like the bride can get ready or different things like that. Now, as far as some of the negatives, like I said, this hotel does require hotel exclusivity in order to book. And then another piece of that is in order to like have catering and whatnot, all the catering has to be done through them. I'm also not the biggest fan of the distance from airport. We had some like seniors traveling with us, and so I was worried about them traveling from like the airport to this hotel. Again, it's an hour away from Lisbon, and so it is a little bit of a trek. And then there's not much to do in the surrounding area. Like the hotel itself is absolutely stunning, but outside of like surfing and like hiking and things like that, there aren't other things for your guests to do. The biggest thing that I was concerned about, as you can see right here, like it's very windy at this spot, and this is where the actual ceremony was based. This is like what the bride and groom would see, and I was worried about like the floral design and potential like wind issues, like blowing the floral design, or like I'm just imagining my hair and like my veil blowing all over the place. Anyway, those were some of the concerns. Now let's get into the cost. So we were quoted 36,000 euros for 2 nights, and that's just for October to December. You are required to book 2 nights in order to utilize their space. Now, during peak season, which is like that summertime up until like October, it's 58,000 euros. So 29,000 a night. Now keep in mind your guests would kind of take up some of that budget as they book their rooms. There's 50 rooms and it accommodates 100 people. But the only thing is, if maybe you're someone who doesn't want to invite 100 people to your wedding, or maybe you have people who drop out of the wedding, close up to the wedding, like you have to take on that responsibility of covering that cost. And that was just something that we just couldn't do. Even the deposit, because I think the deposit was like maybe 20% of that. And so think 20% of 36,000 euros to 58,000 euros to book. It was just a little too much for us. Now, I will say this was one of my favorite venues, and it was fun to kind of just like think through what it would be like to stay here with our guests, to get married here. And I think at the very end of this video, I'm going to show you an area that overlooks like what would be like the reception dinner space. I thought it would be great to have like a toast over this balcony to our guests. So this was the first palace that we got to tour. The name of this palace is Tivoli Palácio de Seteais. So Tivoli Palace of Seteais. I'm trying my best to pronounce these names, but I'm not sure if it's right. But hey, one of the things that I really love about Portugal is like all the different like palaces, castles, and forts and things like that you can have the option to have your wedding at. The room that we're in right now is like one of the bridal suites. So they had different suites where like the groom or the bride could get ready with the bridal party. This is another one of the suites that they had. Now, with this palace, they also have hotel rooms, and so your guests could stay in this hotel. But the only thing about this place is it has 30 rooms, so depending on how many guests you have, it wouldn't be accommodating for everyone. Now, as you can see, this is not gonna give you that modern feel, like that modern hotel experience that your guests could potentially be looking for. This is more so like a unique experience. And in my opinion, I like the unique experience and kind of like the castle vibe for the ceremony, but I did not want our guests to to stay here respectfully. This is one of the rooms that they said like the bride and groom could stay in. It had a really beautiful view of like the lemon garden, and then on the opposite side of the lemon garden was like this view of Sintra. As I mentioned, the hotel rooms are not that modern, and I wanted to make sure that y'all saw all of that, not just like the venue spaces, but also like the stay, because it is overall a part of the venue. This is one of the hallways that led to the guest bedrooms, and I'm not gonna lie, as I was walking through it, it was giving me spooky ooky. Like, I definitely think that this palace has been lived in, and not just, when I say lived in, I'm talking about the undead. It was given very much like the spirits was floating around. I'm not even gonna lie. I hope they don't see this and ban me from ever coming back. But like, this is my truth. So by now you have seen the main ceremony stage, which was outside when we first started showing this venue. And then you've seen the rooms. Now we're going to get into some of the other spaces that are a part of the palace. So this room that we're entering in, this is a cool option for like a rehearsal dinner or like a small, maybe like bridal party dinner. Depending on the size of your wedding, this could also be like your reception dinner space. I want to also talk through like positive, negatives, and costs before we get to the end of the video. So I'm going to go through that really quickly. As far as my positives, I really like the beautiful view from the palace, specifically like the cocktail area, which we'll get to in a few. I like that your guests can stay, even though it kind of gets spooky ooky. The location is really great. It's located within Sintra, so it's walking distance from like some of those main touristy areas. Now, as far as negatives, I didn't like that you have to like they require exclusivity. I also didn't like that the shrubbery that we're looking at right now, like oftentimes it can be dead. And so if you have a wedding and for whatever reason there's a parasite that's, killing off shrubbery during that time, this is what your guests would see. And this was one of the main selling points for me. And I just didn't like the odds of that. I also wasn't a huge fan of like how the style of the guest bedrooms, and then I also didn't like how little rooms they had. So for instance, they only had 30 rooms, and that wasn't going to work for our size of our party. Now, as far as cost, they quoted us $35K a night. Again, this is for exclusivity. And when I say $35K, this is just to book the space. It wasn't really inclusive of much other than like utilizing the space. The area that we're walking to now is where the cocktail hour can take place, which is one of my favorite spaces. If you're a visual person, you get it. But if not, I would recommend going to the venue's like website or like Instagram and seeing weddings that have tagged it. But I thought this was like a really dope place. I can imagine people having like live music, like for instance, someone playing a violin or something like that. Now, this area that we're in is where the main reception dinner would take place. This is another one of those rooms where it's like, if you don't like the style of how it's designed or the decor, that's something to consider, because yes, you can add like your own decor and everything to really jazz it up, and like I've seen pictures of it done really well, but I just wasn't a huge fan of like the color palette. We're almost at the end of this tour. This is where the reception like party would take place. It's kind of interesting because there's no door that leads into that space, but this area right here is where the bar would be for that reception area. So you would have some like seating and everything here for people like maybe don't want to dance. And then this last part of the video is the ceremony space option 2 in the lemon garden. That is pretty much it for this palace. Okay, y'all, this is palace number 2, which was slightly less spooky than the first palace. This is the National Palace of Queluz. Keep in mind, I said national. That's gonna be important later, but I'm gonna let the tour guide break down using this like mini model of the palace, where we would enter and whatnot. So listen to what he gotta say.
It starts like it's the parking lot is over here, okay, but it's a public parking lot, okay, but Usually, the time when the clients arrive, you have always space over here to park the vans or the buses, the way that you come, okay? The entrance, you do it from here. I will explain you everything. We call it the tiles room, okay? Then, if you do the ceremony, you could cross directly to the gardens, okay? And if you have the ceremony over here, it could happen over here, in this area, or over here, or over here. You already see in these three points, okay? Then you finish your ceremony and you have your cocktail. You could held it over here or over here at this garden, okay? Then you need to come to the dinner room, okay? This room over here, the throne room. You have to decide how to do it because we can open this door for you, okay? And you enter directly to the throne room, or the doors on the sides, these ones, and you enter by the sides, okay? Or you don't lose the museological part of the palace and you enter again from here and you do everything by the inside and you enter to the throne room, okay? You have all the possibilities. Then you finish your dinner and the only area where we allow to have parties is this area over here, okay? So you need to move from here through here. You could do it by the outside, okay, or by the inside. You choose how to do it, okay?
Okay.
Then you have your party. We have an auditorium over here. If it is, it could work like a child out area, or if it's raining, or if it's really cold outside, you can use it, okay? Then you finished your party, and we have a tunnel that leads you from here through here, and you will be exactly on the same point.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's see the rooms, please.
This was the first venue that we toured where they had like this mini model of the palace or of the venue. So I thought that was really cool. I also want to note that this is like a tourist attraction. So it's something that is common for them to do. Now, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I did not make note of which rooms were which, but if you listened to the tour guide when he was going through the mini model, he broke down which rooms could be used for what. Now, I want to make note that, like, because this is a tourist attraction and it's a national palace, some rooms can't be used interchangeably for certain things. Like, certain rooms, they wouldn't allow you to have dinner in, or certain rooms you can't have loud music in because it would disrupt, like, the decor, or like the vibration could jeopardize like the design of the overall room. So let's get into the positives and the negatives. As far as positive, because of how beautiful and well kept the palace is, it really doesn't require much. Which could be a really great opportunity to save some dollars, some euros, I would say. I would also say that it's very large and you have so many different spaces that you could utilize. The only thing is, not all the spaces are interchangeable. Like I said, like the vibration of music can't take place in certain rooms because it could disrupt like the overall like architecture and design of the room. I also will say, like, they're beautiful. They have a really beautiful outdoor area. The area that we're in right now is actually where you could do like a cocktail party or something like that. And I also think that it's a great location. Funny enough, this is like located very central, like downtown Lisbon, and so it's very accessible as far as guests that are flying into Lisbon, staying in Lisbon, and then transportation to the venue. It's not difficult. It also has parking, so that's great. Now, as far as negatives, I think the logistics piece is a little confusing to me. I think with this venue, like, you do have to hire your own staff and whatnot, but the piece that kind of is a little frustrating is you have to rent by the room. So I couldn't give y'all a set number of what it would cost to rent this space, because each room has a number tied to it. So it really just depends. And then if you want exclusivity, you have to wait until after it closes because, like I said, it's a national palace. So it's open to the public during the daytime. So that's something to consider. And then because it's a national palace, if anyone like in the government wants to utilize this or host someone from another country for a meeting and they decide on your wedding date to have that meeting there, they can cancel your wedding. Now, they say this is super, super rare, but it's like a possibility, and I don't like those odds. So that was one of the main reasons that I didn't want to go with this space. Now, as far as cost, like I said, it really does vary, but I believe based off what we were quoted, For the rooms we were interested in, it was like 13K and up for 75 people. Like I said, the quote depends on the amount of people and the part of the palace you choose to book. And then as you can see, like from this tour, that there's so many different rooms that you could utilize for different parts of the wedding. It's just so vastly spread out that your guests could be doing a lot of walking in order to get from like point A to B to C. So if you have like guests that are like seniors, that could add complications to their experience. But I will say that inside of the palace, there's like this, I don't even want to say like underground, but like there's a tunnel for transportation. This is the tunnel that we're in. This is the spookiest part of the palace, in my opinion. But there's a tunnel that guests can walk through in order to kind of like speed up their walk through the venue. And that's it for this. Now, with this tour, I'm going to try to be objective as possible because, again, I may not love it, but this might be somebody's dream venue. This is Palacio de Tancos. It's a venue located in Lisbon. It's great if you want to stay in Lisbon and also have the accessibility of like the downtown area and whatnot. So as far as my positives with this specific venue, it has 14 bedrooms. It's great for like you and your wedding party to stay so that the day of the wedding you don't have to worry about too much travel or moving around. I really appreciate that like they incorporate a lot of Portuguese tiles throughout the design of the hotel and the venue. And then on top of that, you'll see at some point when we walk outside, there's this really beautiful view of the city that I can appreciate on the rooftop. I think it's a great place for like maybe a cocktail hour or cake cutting, different things like that. So overall, I really, really appreciated this venue the most for its location. Now, the things that I may not have been the biggest fan of is the size of it. I think for a wedding the size we were looking to have, it was a little too small, and then it wasn't the most accessible for people who may have a disability. And then I really wish that, given that it is a hotel, that it had a few more rooms so that we could have more people stay, if that was the case. Another thing to consider is most of Lisbon has a lot of hills, and this hotel sits on a hill. So at some point, your car doesn't drop you off right at the entrance. There's a little bit of a hill you have to walk up in order to enter the hotel. So that's something to consider as well. And then the biggest thing for us was you can't have music outside after 10 p.m. here. The cost for this venue was 4,000 to 5,000 euros, depending on the weekday or weekend, as well as the season. And that's about it for this venue. This last shot is where the ceremony space would be. As you can see, like I mentioned, it is on the smaller side, so be aware of that. Now, this next one is another hotel that's based in Lisbon. So again, it's perfect for like staying in the city, being able to explore the city, and then also having your wedding there. This is the One Palacio de Anunciada. I think I'm saying that right. So this was one of those ones that like I was really in love with certain aspects and then wanting more in other aspects. This area that we're in right now is like the main area for like a reception. You can already tell like this is a great place for like having a dinner and having like a party at the same all in one. And now I will say, of all the hotels or palaces or venues that incorporated the option to like have your guests stay there, this was my favorite one. I just love the location, how modern it is, and then like this, like the staff, everybody was super super kind, and I just envisioned my guests having a really good time staying here, but I just couldn't envision having the wedding here specifically, and I'm gonna get more into that. So I'll go ahead and like give y'all some of my thoughts. I think that this can be a more affordable option because with this hotel, this was the only one that did this, but if you have your guests stay here, they allow you to use some of the spaces basically almost like for free, except for like you pay for the food, you pay for everything else. And so this could really be a great option to save money. But again, you haven't seen the spaces yet, so outside of that reception space. So keep watching and you'll understand why we just still couldn't go with them. Now, other things to consider. If you are having a smaller wedding party, I think that they could accommodate as low as like 25 people. So I think this is a great option. This is one of the hotel dining spaces, but they said this could also be incorporated into something. Like say if you want to have your dinner here, or say you want to have a rehearsal dinner, something like that. They also advertise it as options for your ceremony space. If you look at every one of the ceilings in these rooms, you can see it's very beautiful, very breathtaking. This is like an outdoor garden area, like in the center of the hotel. They talked to us about how we could create a cocktail space here, which I thought could be really really cute, and I definitely could envision that. Now, my biggest hang up with them, and you can already tell I'm talking through the positives, talking through the negatives. As far as negatives, one of the things that I really, really didn't like was their wedding packages are very plug and play. So if you want to kind of really curate and build out your dream wedding, this isn't necessarily the space for that. They basically showed us a brochure, and it outlined like, do you want these flowers? Do you want these flowers? Do you want this cake, or do you want this cake? I need to have more agency over like the entire process. So that just wasn't for us, to be honest. Now the area that I'm headed towards now in the video is another option for the ceremony space. This was probably my least favorite space that they showed us. And the last thing I'll say with this venue is keep in mind with cost, it is really just dependent on you having a room block with them. But I think that you can also rent the spaces. I'm just not aware of what the cost associated with that is to get to. There was some road work that was going on that almost prevented us from doing our tour. But anyway, this is Herdade, Peru. It's located about 45 minutes away from Lisbon. There is so much space with this venue that you can work with. And our tour guide told us that apparently like Madonna did a photo shoot here. This is a really, really beautiful venue. The area that we're in right now is one of the options for like for the actual ceremony. Like as you walk up that grass area, that is where the ceremony typically takes place. One thing I encourage everyone to consider with this venue is like the amount that would go into the production of a wedding here, especially like with all this space. So as you can see, there's a lot of space to work with. And they mentioned that like there's no staff, food, anything that is incorporated in utilizing this space outside of just utilizing the space. So whatever rate you get, that's all that comes with that. This area that we have here is literally like it's an area that can be used for the reception. They showed us some pictures of what it looks like at night with like string lights inside of it. But if I'm being honest, it reminded me of plantations in America that have now been remodeled to be wedding venues. And I'm going to say this because a lot of people may not know this, but Portugal was the first European country to participate in the transatlantic slave trade. So keep in mind that some of these venues absolutely could have history or ties to slavery. So please keep that in mind. This is one of like the wine cellars that they have. I thought this was really, really cool. And if you have your wedding party stay here, I think it's a really cool activity for you to do, like a wine tasting there. This was a tent that they had as an option to have the wedding in, which they also showed us pictures of what that looked like. Honestly, the pictures don't, like, this doesn't do it justice. As always, let's get into the positives, negatives, and the cost. So one of the things that I really appreciate is that they have some rooms on site for your bridal party. They have 13 rooms on site. This is what we're looking at right now, some of the rooms and suites that are on site. This makes it easy for, like, bridal, like the hair, the makeup, different things like that. You can have them come directly to you and then walk out to the wedding. I think that makes it super seamless. I also appreciate the space that you have to work with, especially the outdoor spaces and the tent space. Very much a blank slate for you to work with, which I appreciate. The only concern is weather, but that's not a positive. But anyways, I also would say that you don't have to worry too much about noise concerns, so you really can have a good time here. Now, as far as negatives, I think the journey to this venue really threw us off a bit. And I think it was like a one-off situation because of the road work. But I can't imagine my guests having the experience we had trying to get there. And so that was something that really threw us off. The distance from the airport also is something to consider. And then for cost, it was $12,500 to $19,500 depending on indoors or outdoor space usage. And then you can have up to 150 people at your wedding. And this would cover 10 hours of service. It is so crazy looking back at this venue specifically because you could not tell me before we did our tours and before we went to Portugal that this was not going to be our wedding venue. I had already decided, I had decided this was going to be the venue. And when I reached out to the wedding planners, one of them, she's kind of like, again, she's a plug and play type of wedding planner, and then the other planner, the one that we went with, when we shared this venue with her and that this was one of the ones we were really interested in, she automatically was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not a fan of it. It looks great in pictures, but like as far as the upkeep, there's certain things that you need to consider, and I appreciate her so much for this. This is Fort de Cruz. The area that we're looking at right now is where the ceremony space typically takes place. It overlooks a local and public, and I'm gonna emphasize public, beach. And I honestly, from the pictures I saw online, I was just in love with it. I just thought it was so enchanting. Now that I'm looking back at it, it reminds me of something I might have seen like on Shrek or something. But it was such a vibe to me. And I could have just imagined like my family here and like having a cocktail hour here or something like that. And just having the views and the architecture and everything. It was just everything to me. Now, this area that we're in right now, they mentioned that this could be like an area for a cocktail hour. This also could be a space for you to take pictures after the wedding. You also can take pictures on the beach, but the thing that you want to consider when taking pictures on the beach is that it's a public beach, so anybody can be in the back of your picture. You can't really tell them like, hey, move. You know what I mean? Now, this area that we're walking into now, this is where the dinner and main like reception area typically takes place. The things that we were told is that in the summer and in the hotter areas or hotter times, it can get really hot and your guests can get overheated. This area that we're in now is another ceremony space. That greenery that's there cannot be removed. So it has to be incorporated with whatever design that you intend to do during your wedding. That this area for the ceremony space seemed to be a lot more narrow than it was advertised online. Now, this room that we're in now is an area that can be used for like the dance floor, the party, and whatnot. All of the interior areas and the inside areas is where the party area would be during the wedding. Now, let's get into the positives, negatives, cost, and whatnot. As far as positives, I initially love the beautiful view of the water as well as the architecture. Those were the pieces or the things that really sold me on this venue. As far as negatives, the bathroom upkeep was not the best. I would say that like if I can go into the bathroom and like smell it, that's an issue. Apparently the reception space can get really hot and you run the risk of people overheating. I also want to make note that like I said, the upkeep just wasn't the best. Now, as far as cost, I did not get a quote, but the Lisbon wedding planner says that she can produce an entire wedding for 36,000 euros. Now, I don't know what the type of wedding you're going to get, but this will be inclusive of the venue and all the vendors and everything that's included for your wedding. Y'all, this is the final venue that I have to share for y'all. I know I mentioned in the beginning of this video that we had 10 venues, but I wasn't thinking straight. That was 10 venues, including the venue that we went with. So this is actually only 9 venues that I'm sharing with you. But this is Vandelli Botanical Garden. When I tell you this botanical garden is so stunning, the wedding planner that we went with has actually produced a couple of weddings in this space, and they all equally looked so beautiful. I'm going to quickly go through the positives, negatives, and I don't have the cost for this one, unfortunately. But as far as positives, as you can see, it's beautiful. There's a beautiful garden that you can utilize, but there's also a glass house that's new and something that they are now offering as an option. There's also breathtaking views, especially if you're incorporating like drone photography. The architecture is also super dope. And what I appreciate is, although it's a garden, they have like slopes and hills, so it's wheelchair accessible. As far as negatives, and you'll see this, they have wild peacocks, and if that's not your vibe, then that's not your vibe. It's not my vibe. I don't want to be in the middle of my ceremony and then a peacock interrupts. So that's my take on that. But that's pretty much it for this one. I highly recommend checking out their Instagram page, as well as looking to see what planners have utilized this space, because it helps you get an idea of how like the weddings have been produced in this space. That's it, y'all. As y'all can see, a lot of them were giving princess diaries, like I said. Some of them we love more than others. All in all, I hope that this video allowed you to capture the essence and the true beauty of some of the venues in Portugal. I think that some of the venues were just beautiful in themselves. And if you are a very visual person, seeing these venues as a blank slate and envisioning your wedding in them, I'm telling you, I can only imagine what some of the weddings look like that have been produced in some of these venues. Absolutely breathtaking. Anyway, be on lookout for the rest of this month. I'm going to be posting a couple of other videos. I am going to post our wedding and my bridal trials from when we returned back to Portugal the second time. So if you're interested in that, you have any questions about that, please let us know. Funny enough, I don't know if I have clips of it, but Jaimir also went and got a haircut while he was there. While we were in Portugal the second time, I did 2 makeup trials. I did a hair trial for my bridesmaids. Again, my wedding hairstylist is based in London, but there's a braiding shop based in Lisbon that's going to be doing these ponytails for my bridesmaids. So I did a practice ponytail with them, which they ate down on. To this day, I don't think I've ever had a ponytail that's slick, and it lasted so long. They did their thing. We also did 2 different food trials. We went back to our wedding venue, which again, I can't show y'all that. But we went back to our wedding venue and were able to really visualize things. And this time we were able to actually walk through, envision ourselves walking down the aisle. It was very magical. We also got to stay at the hotel that we have our wedding block with, which I also love. I probably won't share that until after the wedding, just for the safety of our guests. Not to say that y'all are weirdos, but there's weirdos out there on the internet that are weirdos. So I'll hold off on sharing that information. But if y'all want hotel recommendations, I can also add that in another video. That is it for this video. Thank y'all so much if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you really enjoyed it and you haven't done this already, make sure you subscribe and be on the lookout for my next video. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.